Thank you, Dennis. Good morning. And on behalf of Deloitte, I'd like to welcome you again to this event. We are very grateful that you've made the time to be here this morning. I'd also like to acknowledge our virtual audience, who in terms of numbers are actually a greater part of this gathering. Thank you. Now, at Deloitte, we are passionate about making an impact that matters. That is why we have provided this platform to enable us share ideas and have collective views and deliberations on how we can move this economy forward and how we can develop and maintain a sustainable economy. On housekeeping, to my left, most of the doors here open to the left, so you can exit here, and also there's also a right exit. To the washrooms, if you go to my right, out, right again, another right, you see the washrooms. To start this program, please join me to welcome our dynamic country managing partner, Daniel Owusu, to give us a welcome address. Daniel.
Yeah, good morning. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and honored participants, a very cordial welcome to the Deloitte Economic Dialogue, a forum where we have insightful conversation, share knowledge, and voice our thoughts on economic issues. Following the reading of the 2024 budget statement on Wednesday, 15th November 2023, we are gathered today to discuss the implications of the policies to individuals, businesses, citizens, and all interested parties. But before I continue, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our invited speakers and panelists. And let me start with Honorable, thank you very much for coming. And I know the budget is being discussed, but thank you for making time and for making time all the time to be with us. Prof. Borkins, thank you, Prof, for joining us today. We always enjoy your comments and you are in swingers. And Madam, you always keep the balance in the team and they are messing up. You keep everybody calm. John, thank you. I have a few questions for you. The banks are all posting great results. Have they turned the corner? Yao and Gideon, thank you for making up the team. And to all our attendees, both in person and virtual, we appreciate the time you have taken to be part of this gathering. Your presence demonstrates your commitment to driving progress and prosperity in our nation, Ghana. And we are honored by your collaboration. This forum has become a vital platform for thought leaders, industry experts, and policymakers to provide insights into the economic direction of our nation, as well as obtain feedback on key initiatives of the government over the past year and unpack what the future holds. The theme for this year's budget edition is building together, accelerating the recovery process through fiscal discipline and economic competitiveness. In a bid to restore the economy to pre-pandemic growth times, the government has implemented the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth, what is termed PCPEG, a program backed by the extended credit facility from the International Monetary Fund to accelerate the recovery and the growth process of the economy. As a result of this, the pursuit of fiscal discipline and economic competitiveness It's not a zero-sum game. These two elements are mutually reinforcing and must work hand in hand with government resolve to revamp the economy. Fiscal discipline creates a stable and a predictable microeconomic environment that is conducive to investment and growth. And the economic competitiveness, in turn, bring about increased growth driven by public and private productivity, which generates revenue for government. Thus, further enhances the overall economic prosperity of the land. To accelerate the recovery process, we must work together to adopt a comprehensive approach that addresses both fiscal discipline and economic competitiveness, hence our theme for the year's budget forum. A running theme in the 2024 budget is the initiative to promote economic sustainability in an environmentally friendly manner. And you would have seen and followed that these include waiver of import duties on electronic vehicles for public transportation, waiver of import duties on knockdown electronic vehicles, and expansion of environmental SI duty to cover plastic packaging, industrial and vehicle emission. These initiatives prepare the country for the future where sustainability and environmental consciousness are at the forefront of the consumer choices and the business practices. Now, we have put together 5 recommendations that we want the government to consider. So one of the biggest challenges of our economy and society in general is the level of unemployment in Ghana. This has been worsened by contraction of the industrial sector in 2023. Given the effect and the effort of the government on planting for food and jobs phase 2, we encourage government to enhance agro-processing, leading to value addition, industrial growth, and create employment opportunities for our youth. That we've called intentional focus on agric and industry. 2, lack of currency, stable currency affect planning and confidence in investment. Government should work to stabilize the currency as industry looks forward to this in any projections and investment decisions. So the currency stability is very crucial because it can undermine all the efforts that are being made from other sectors. 3, we have noticed growing concerns by industry about the extreme aggression of some of the regulatory authorities towards enforcing compliance. Without discouraging enforcement, we strongly recommend an approach that identifies industry as a partner in economic development. And somebody says, if you push me, then I will give examples. But for now, I will leave it at this. We have seen some stability in the system with a downward trend in inflation in recent months. And again, our recommendation is that government should sustain the monetary and fiscal policy to keep moving inflation to the targeted levels. And the last one, in the short to medium term, government should consider removing some of the taxes that industry have termed nuisance taxes. We know some of them generate revenue. So someone gave the example that any issue that will happen, if you are not careful, it will lead to additional tax, and the previous ones are not removed. We recommend to government to consider removing some of these taxes, for example, COVID-19 levies, and we also recommend that we consolidate some of the indirect taxes into the VAT regime. To conclude, our ideas, experiences, and insights are invaluable in shaping our collective understanding of the opportunities and the challenges ahead. That is why I urge you all to actively engage in the discussions ahead and make your concerns known. Let us seize this moment to build a better and prosperous future for our country. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for being here today, and let us commence this year's Deloitte Economic Dialogue with a shared commitment to driving Ghana to a sustainable economic recovery. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's time for us to call on our keynote speaker, the Honorable Minister, to give us the keynote address, and I have the honor of introducing her. She has a very long profile because she's been around for a very long time. She's done all sorts of things, but I'll try and keep it short, and I hope, Honorable, you will not be offended that I'll cut out some of the things. So, Honorable Abna Osei, she's a chartered accountant by profession. She's also have significant experience in the banking and finance space. She's a second-term deputy minister at the ministry in charge of revenue. So I can tell you she's the one coming up with all the taxes. Oh, that's him. He also serves on several public boards and committees, currently serving on the board of SNIT, the Government Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, ADB, our own ADB, Exim Bank Guarantee. In Parliament, she serves on several committees as well: Employment, Social Welfare and State Enterprises Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, the Finance Committee, to mention a few. She's a fellow in terms of profession or qualification. She's a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, also a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and a member of the Financial Market Association. She's a proud alumnus of University of Ghana, and also a proud old girl of Wege Wesley Girls. Honorable Abna Osei Asare, shall we please welcome Honorable.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very happy to see known faces here, and so I know today I'm in safe hands. Deloitte, it's really an honor to be here with you this morning. And you've been doing this for some time, giving government the platform to hear from very important stakeholders, and for us to also share our thoughts on why we put the budget in a certain direction. So thank you very much. I also remember that in July, prior to our mid-year budget review, we engaged with you once again, and you wanted to find out how government was repositioning itself in the context of a post-IMF deal. And today, we are here with a new theme, which Deloitte says is how to use fiscal discipline and economic competitiveness to move the nation forward. You couldn't have chosen a better topic, fiscal discipline, in an election year. It's always a tough one in an election year, but this time, government is committed to making sure that we do not move in the direction which other election years have gone, and stabilize the economy with the gains that we have made. And so you couldn't have chosen a better topic than this one. Today, the key macroeconomic indicators have significantly improved, and we all have seen signs of stability. I remember in July, when government said we had seen some improvements and we're turning around the corner. Our colleagues on the other side thought it was a mere rhetoric, but clearly the numbers are here for all of us to see. And we can all attest to the fact that 2023 is really the bounce back year. And we couldn't have done it without the support of everybody here. And so we want to thank you for how you have helped us shape or implement the 2023 budget. Professor Bobkin, thank you. And we take in all the comments in good faith. Those that we can work on immediately, we try to do so. Those that we need to go back and have certain engagements with our stakeholders, we also do so. So for 2023, we are very grateful for the partnership that we have enjoyed with everybody, especially the people here. And so thank you. And let me give us a few indicators of why we think 2023 is the bounce back year. We saw inflation in 2022 and how through, for us, the PC-PEG and certain disciplines that we put in place, and we have seen a fall in inflation. Inflation was at 54.1% in December 2022, and today it's at 35.2% for the October inflation numbers. But globally, for a country like Ghana, we've been projected to end the year with 42.5 as the inflation rate. So if in October we are 35.2, we hope to build on that and reduce it further. Again, every country that goes through a debt exchange program see some drop or fall in its economic growth. And so for 2023, we projected a growth of 1.5%. But clearly, what we see now has outpaced our projections. For the first quarter, the growth was 3.4, and the second quarter, 3.2. So on the average, a 3.2% growth in the first two quarters. And we are hoping to build on that to make sure we stabilize the economy and see more growth that will create wealth and employment as well. We also saw how the cedi behaved in 2022. And especially in November, it depreciated against its major currencies by close to 54%. But right from February to date, we have seen a cumulative, a modest depreciation of 6.4%. And so clearly when we say we have turned around the corner, we know what we're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, these refreshing results are the outcomes of focused implementation of the post-COVID-19 program. That's the PC-PEG, which the IMF is supporting us to implement. We are also adhering to the fiscal discipline and building competitiveness in this regard. That notwithstanding, we know we are not out of the woods yet. There are risks ahead of us, and we need to do everything possible to make sure we stem the tide. The IMF indicated that global recovery remains very slow, with little margins for errors. The Kenyan finance minister also noted in September this year that all low and middle income countries are walking a tightrope given the current economic constraints globally. And that is why fiscal discipline is very, very important. Domestically, we also recognize our vulnerabilities with revenue mobilization and expenditure rationalization as well. And so that is why for the first time in our history, the ministry, with support of other stakeholders, have come up with the medium-term revenue strategy, which is published on our website. And it is through this medium-term revenue strategy that we have teased out the revenue measures for 2024. We know that many of us are anxious about what has been called election year slippages. And so government is also tight on commitment. Government is tight on commitment such that, one, moving forward, government is not going to go into commercial loan funded projects. Usually when you check our Appendix 10C of the budget, that is where we have our commercial loan funded projects. But in this year, to show commitment, government says we are not going to fund projects commercially. What we are going to do is to set monies aside to make sure we complete the existing projects. And so we are trying as much as possible to live within the monies that we can raise. And if for any reason we have to commit to a project, it has to go through the processes as stated in the law. And so we are not just going to go on an election platform, a campaign platform, and then give promises, because when you check the Appendix of the budget, there's no space, or there's no room, there's no indication of government going in for any commercially funded projects for the year. And moving forward, we want to safeguard what we have been able to achieve. And in doing that, we have set out some key targets for ourselves. The first is achieving a surplus primary balance on commitment basis of 0.5% of GDP in 2024, and then move to 1.5% for 2025 onwards. And if you bear with me, it is a huge commitment that government is making. Looking at the fact that for 2023, we have a deficit of 0.5% when it comes to our primary balance. So trying to offset the deficit and then moving on to make another 0.5% surplus is a real commitment that government is making to make sure we build on the stability and also grow the economy. Again, we're trying to improve on our revenue numbers, especially non-oil revenue numbers. And like I said, for 2024, when you check our medium-term revenue strategy, it is our hope that we will be able to raise about 0.9% of revenue of GDP for the first time. And so we are hoping that you will support us. In as much as government is hoping to raise revenue, government is also giving some reliefs that will support the industry and increase competitiveness in our local industry. And so for revenue, we are hoping to raise about 150.3 billion Ghana cedis in terms of revenue. And for expenditure, all things being equal, we are hoping to spend about 226 billion Ghana cedis. And then when we talk about expenditure, there are certain things that are given. You hear people say that, yes, government should rationalize expenditure. It is very, very important. But there are certain things that government cannot in any way touch. But what government can do is to try and introduce efficiency into that. The first is compensation. Unlike 2023, where we delivered the budget before we were able to conclude on wage negotiations, it became a very difficult thing for government. And government budgeted a certain amount. In the end, government had to go over and above what had been budgeted because we couldn't finish the negotiations before we sent the budget to Parliament. But thankfully, as commitment to living within our means, this year, government was able to conclude on the base pay with labor before taking the budget to Parliament. So clearly, everything has been factored in there, and there's not going to be any spillages in the area of compensation. But we don't know labor and election years. We all know what happens. But we pray and hope that we finishing with the base pay before sending the budget to Parliament will minimize the risk in that area, because election year tickles Labour's fancy when it comes to negotiations, and we are aware of that. Also, For the expenditures, the other item that comes through is our interest payments. We have concluded with the domestic debt exchange, and we were able to make savings to the tune of about 6.1 billion. And so over the 10 years, we are hoping to make savings of about 61 billion. And we did it with the support of everybody here. And so for that, we are grateful. We are yet to conclude on the external one, but once we do that too, we believe we can also make some savings in that regard and reduce our interest payments expenditure under the expenditure category. Again, the other next thing under expenditure are statutory payments. For statutory payments, they are guided by laws, and so you cannot reduce, and it's a function of the revenue that you raise. So once you raise that revenue, you expected to pay the District Assembly Common Fund, National Health Insurance, GET Fund, and all the other road fund, and all the other statutory payments that have been listed in the law. And that alone is taking about 40 billion Ghana cedis. And so when you look at, you compare your revenue to all the expenditure line items that I have pointed out, clearly your revenue is almost gone. And so that is why government is doing everything possible to raise at least the minimum it wants to raise, the total of 176 billion Ghana cedis, including grants, and to make sure that we minimize the deficits that we have. I come to competitiveness of our industry, of our local businesses. For this, the 2024 budget is focused on expanding investment in the real sector to implement new growth strategies and chart a new course. In the budget, we have about 3 billion being invested in agriculture and agribusiness, trade and industry, the textiles and garments, the tourism industry, aquaculture, and we're also going to work on the innovation and digitalization that we have already begun. And we hope that once efficiency comes into play, we'll reduce the cost and improve the competition here. And as part of that too, government has given some reliefs, one to the textile industry. This was supposed to have come to an end in December 2023, but government is extending it for another 2 years to make sure we continue to build the capacity of our local textiles companies, and also to help them create jobs. Another relief that government is also giving or has given in this budget is the extension for vehicles assembled in this country. They also have been given a relief, and they are under the companies that have a zero-rated VAT. A third one which government is introducing, which before the budget was a very topical issue, was taxes on sanitary pads. Government engaged the 2 companies that produce sanitary pads in this country. They were Fay Enterprise and Sunda Ghana. And government sat with them. We looked at their numbers, and clearly it confirmed that given that support, they can be able to produce the needed, all the needed capacity for this country. And so government decided that, one, based on the numbers that they have shown us, Sunda produces, given the support, will be able to produce about 900 million pieces a year. And for Fay Enterprise, given the support, they will be able to produce about 60 million pieces a year. Sunda employs close to 900 people. Fay employs close to 40 people. And so given that support, they can increase employment as well. So for import duties on raw materials that they use in making sanitary towels, we've had to remove them. And also for VAT, they are also part of the zero-rated VAT companies. But I must say that we will need the support of everybody to make sure it goes through Parliament. These are bills that we are introducing to Parliament. And so you have members of Parliament, you belong to constituencies. So we ask that you speak to them for them to approve the budget, and two, for the bills to also go through, so that we can give the needed support to our local industries. Again, we are also asking GIPC. We are supporting them to complete foreign direct investment operations worth about $5.2 billion. And we are also leveraging on the strength of the financial ecosystem. Mr. Joniwa, this is to you, to provide loans, partial guarantees, and venture capital to private entities for transformational and strategic projects. Specifically, we're going to support DBG, raise funds of about $1 billion between 2024 and 2025. And they will also increase lending to about 2 billion Ghana cedis for 2024. We all know about GESEL. GESEL will also provide about 350 million partial risk guarantees to leverage private sector participation in the agricultural sector and agribusiness. Daniel mentioned that we should help such businesses so that they can also transform the raw materials that we have here into something that can add value and also create jobs in the end. Again, government will pursue the negotiations of a $500 million commitment from the IFC to support in this regard. We also know Mr. John Iwa is aware of the plans to recapitalize banks. And so we're working with these stakeholders to make sure that happens. There's also the Venture Capital Trust Fund that government is committing additional funds to enable it to support the private sector. And we hope that with the reliefs and all these supports, it will go a long way to increase the competitiveness of our industries or our local companies. But that is not all. Other investments are also being pursued to ease the cost of doing business. We are addressing access to credits, skills, and raw materials, as stated by the private sector during our pre-budget engagement with them. They mentioned that sometimes it's difficult to find the right skills, the right skilled people to employ. And so we should look at that in the training of human resource for the industry. Also, we are enacting the business regulatory reforms and providing critical tax reliefs to smoothen the flow of raw materials and machinery for the private sector. Yes, and that also has to do with the pharmaceutical companies. What we intend doing is to send the LI 2255 back to Parliament to amend it to enable us exempt critical ingredients that are used in the production of drugs to be exempted from the payment of taxes. And we believe this will go a long way to increase the competitiveness of our pharmaceutical companies here, and also give them the opportunity to spread their wings outside our country. Similarly, we have committed to consolidating and completing ongoing infrastructure projects, and we have set aside about 11.6 billion Ghana cedis to do this, to clear the areas to enable contractors continue and complete projects. So clearly the focus is on completing existing projects rather than embarking on new projects. Again, other key areas of the 2024 budget include investing in critical social protection programs and leveraging climate finance to support stability and growth. And in that regard, we are looking at capitation grants for the schools, NHIS, for the first time in a long while. No, I think this is the very first time. The allocation given to national health insurance has moved from the 2 to 3 billions to 6.5 billion. And so clearly tells you that we are committed to safeguarding our social protection programs, and also our livelihood empowerment program, that's LEAP, We have also indexed LEAP to inflation so that the stipends that we give them are monies that sort of can address the reasons why we are giving it to them, because it's at a market value, because it's been pegged to inflation. And again, government has increased the allocations that they give to school feeding. And we believe this will also go along to encourage our young people to go to school and also benefit from this. So in addition to what government is taking, government is giving back and addressing social protection programs. We also intend to use the opportunity of the 2024 budget to deepen stability and economic growth in the context of accelerating the recovery from the recent challenges. The interventions outlined in the budget are crucial to our national life. And for that, the focus of this budget, one, is provision of roads, including clearance of road arrears. Two, completion of ongoing IPEP projects. IPEP projects are constituency-related projects spread across the country. We also want to focus on rural electrification and telephony. We want to resource the National Identification Authority to enable them complete the issuance of Ghana cards to citizens. We also want to prepare and implement the growth strategy that will focus on agri industry, tourism, and digitalization. We want to leverage climate financing for green growth. One of the most important things we want to do in this 2024 budget is to make sure the 2024 elections are funded fully and not just giving EC money to run the elections, but also the other independent governance institutions, funding them to enable them support EC in that process. Again, as one of the priorities of the 2024 budget, we are hoping that it wouldn't be like before, where in 2016, all the IMF targets were missed, but we'll continue to implement the IMF supported PC program and make sure we abide by the targets. And that is why I think your topic on fiscal discipline is apt. And finally, we want to continue with our debt restructuring program and hopefully complete it in 2024. One thing that we have also decided to spend on to make sure we continue to live in peace is security. Because when you look at all the countries around us, things are not as they used to be. And so this budget is also giving priority to security. And so if you're a citizen of this country, you should know that all these things have been adequately looked at in the budget. In conclusion, we recognize the role played by stronger partnerships in this recovery. Labor, employers, private sector, development partners, bondholders, and investors have all been key collaborators in this. Accelerating the recovery and improving competitiveness will need more and more stronger partnership. We know that these partnerships will be better served if we strengthen our KPIs, keeping people informed. And so this is the approach we hope and we are hoping to go. Since the budget was read last week, we've been doing that and we will continue to do that. So I want us to use this occasion to deepen the understanding of the policy choices that we have made. And together you can support us to implement the 2024 budget to see the results that we all hope to see. So thank you very much, Deloitte, for the platform, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Honorable. We hear you, and we'll be attentive to see how things pan out. So we wish the government well, and we hope that it will achieve successes in all its intentions in the budget as they have set out. Thank you. Before we continue, we'd like to acknowledge a few of our invited guests. Everybody here is an invited guest, but there are a few here that we just want to mention. We'll keep mentioning them as we go along. So these are not all. We have the MD of Dufil, Mahesh Shah, in our midst. Welcome. Thank you for coming. We have the MD of Banyan Group, Tosna Jalan. Thank you for coming. We have a director of SG Bank, Mr. Fosohini Echampo. Thank you for coming. We also have the Director General of the Internal Audit Agency, Dr. Eric Odro Osai. Thank you for coming. These are not all. We'll keep mentioning the rest as we go along. Next on the program is a presentation and launching of the Deloitte report on the 2024 budget statement. To do this is one of our partners at Deloitte, Yao Apia Latte Esquire. Yao is a partner who leads the financial advisory group in Ghana. He's also the Africa head of infrastructure and capital projects in Deloitte. Yao, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. So I'll do a very quick presentation on the budget. I'm happy the minister has given some detailed overview of some of the policy rationale behind the initiatives. So what I'll speak to is what the business community were expecting or what they're expecting. So as we move on from the budget statement to appropriation, some of these concerns will be incorporated. Because obviously a budget is a statement and then it will move to an appropriation bill where we implement or we action or operationalize whatever we outline in the budget. So those concerns will be incorporated. I think before I go to my presentation, I will speak to some of the key risks and then some of the key concerns that were raised by businesses ahead of the budget. Just summarize them. So the first issue that were raised by businesses were taxes. And obviously, some businesses wanted some taxes removed or scrapped, but we didn't see that. So as you go through the appropriation process, maybe some of the key concerns around e-levy, financial sector recovery levy, and then we had the COVID levy. I mean, these are taxes that some businesses wanted reviewed or scrapped or removed. And then the second concern for most business was cost of credit. So as we were increasing the policy rate or policy rate is increasing and then return on government securities are increasing, then you see the impact on cost of credit because cost of credit is driven by either the policy rate or return on government security. So if return on government security is increasing, then obviously cost of credit is increasing. So that's something that businesses wanted addressed in the budget. Then the third concern had to do with issues around the double tron problem of inflation and then exchange rate. One is dependent on the other in a way. So as we address the exchange rate problem, we partly address the inflation problem because part of our inflation is imported inflation. So if your local currency is depreciating, you also see the impact on inflation. And then the last is what Economic Intelligence Unit highlighted, that increased political activity affecting the business of government. And this morning, I heard the Speaker of Parliament complaining bitterly that the members of the majority are not there to support the budget. So please, Honorable Minister, tell your team members in the House to be in Parliament and ensure that the budget and appropriation bill is passed on time. But obviously, it's a concern that was raised by the Economic Intelligence Unit to affect the business of government because members of Parliament want to be re-elected, and as they go out to their constituencies, then the business of government is held waiting. So I'll go through my presentation. I'll just do a quick one. So we go to the slide. Okay. Okay, great. So Minister rightly said that there have been instances or some of these indicators that show clearly that we've turned around the corner. Now, obviously, there are a few positives or some good results that we are seeing. So we projected our revised GDP growth was 1.5, but as such, let's say the end of June, thereabout, our GDP growth was 3.2. So obviously a clear indication that we are heading towards the right direction. My apologies. We are heading towards the right direction. And then end of year inflation. This one that we find a little bit tricky, but obviously we have predicted end of year inflation to be about 31.3%. As we speak, inflation about 35.1%. By the Ghana Fiscal Service. So clearly it's a downward trend because it started somewhere in January at 53.6%. So we are seeing a downward trend in inflation. So clearly some turning around the corner happening there. And then we had a prime balance deficit budgeted at 4.6%. We are currently holding around 3%. Obviously, this is around August. So then by end of year, some of the interest expenditure might get this figure to go, but at least at 3%, we are closing the target or heading to the target. But obviously, in 2024, we are looking at about 5.9%, and that's an election year. So we want to watch that election year. You want to keep or you want to be a lot more disciplined than you have been. It's more difficult, but we expect that to happen. And primary reserve, we are looking at turning or reversing the negative trend to a positive trend. That is significant. So from -5 to a positive 0.5. So negative 0.5 to a positive 0.5. So that's significant. That's something that we are supposed to watch. Now, if you look at the depreciation of the local currency, this is something that has also shown some positive results. Clearly, you can see last year the cedi depreciated by about 53.8% to the dollar. As we speak, the depreciation is around 22.9%. So that's a remarkable improvement. And then you also have the cedi to the pound at 45%, also to the euro at about 46%, all hovering around 24% and 22%. So on average, against the major currencies, our local currency has depreciated by 23%, as opposed to about 45% last year. So there's some remarkable improvement. And of course, it shows some turning around the corner. Inflation, as you can see here, last December, like I said, 54.1%. And then currently we are hovering around 35.2%. And then we're also looking at, and then next year about 15%. And then obviously our long-term inflation rate is 8% plus or minus 2. So you can do 6% or 10%. That's our long-term inflation target. Now, there's a trend that is very interesting, and it's something that you overlook, but it's for us as maybe policymakers and drivers for government. You can see agri sector and industry sector historically were the major contributors. These two sectors have been overtaken by the service sector, which is not unusual for a business or economy that is growing. But you notice that the sector or the two sectors that provide the largest employment for the populace is the industry and agri sector. Agri sector, you do not require a lot of skill. Industry sector, you also do not require a lot of skill. But these are sectors that are declining. So where you are not allowing sectors that employ the majority to grow, or they are not growing, and there's a lot of contraction, industry sector contracted. And that's a cause for worry because it's going to affect employment, and employment that we are looking at generating for our people, we may not get. So that's something that we should be mindful of. It's good to have the service sector grow, but it's a sector that requires a lot of skill to operate. The agri sector does not require a lot of skill. So that employs a lot of people too. So we should outline policies that will help grow the sectors, particularly agri and industry sector. So this is a chart showing our sources of revenue. So historically, over the last 3 years, we are projected to generate revenue from taxes between 75 to 77%. So in a year when we're looking at, let's say, introducing a tax like e-levy, we are budgeted to generate revenue of 100 billion. 7 billion of that was supposed to come from e-levy. So 70% from other taxes. So clearly, the same thing that we are repeating here. Another 77% from taxes. The rest are from other sources. I think the question here is, can we optimize the returns on other sources? So for instance, grants. So when you do get grants, they do not come with the conditionalities that we are getting from our loan facilities from IMF and others. We do know that countries that are also in our region. So for instance, we say lower middle income. Kenya is lower middle income, but Kenya gets a lot of grants. If you look at the allocation or revenue source for Kenya, they get a lot of grants. So we should also try and then get lots of grants for strategic projects. I like the argument or the submission by the minister saying the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund is giving a lot of facilities to some countries in the West Africa coast for specific projects. So we should be able to tap into that. The next one is expenditure. I'm also excited about the fact that the wage bill or the compensation for public sector has gone up by 23%. So that's something that is welcome. But the impact is this, that now interest that used to be the highest component or the highest expenditure partner at 28% is now around 24% after a debt restructuring. So that's a remarkable improvement for the interest sector, but for the interest expenditure. But the compensation has now become the largest again because you are increasing the wage bill. The argument about 24-hour economy is something that we should take serious if you want to increase productivity, particularly in the public sector. So the compensation that you are giving to the public sector workers, it has to be commensurate with the work or the productivity that you are getting from them. How are you measuring that productivity? Because it's not just about increasing wages for the public sector, it's also ensuring that you are getting productivity or productivity is increasing for that sector. That commensurates with the kind of target that you are looking at. I mean, I think if you look at how we are doing, maybe I can go back to the revenue side. Okay, so let's go back to the previous slide. Revenue side, we move closer to our budget a little bit. Okay. Good. So revenue, you can see as at Q3, we are 96% of what we have budgeted. So we're about 4% shy of budget. Same on the expenditure side, you see about 79, and then other expenditure sources have been cut, or there are some disciplined expenditure sources. I think for us, or for me, this particular slide shows something that's interesting: capital expenditure. If we spend on capex, it improves the value of our GDP. So historically, we have spent on recurrent expenditure. So there's remarkable improvement in capital expenditure. Our capital expenditure has been historically around 10 to 11%. This time, we are seeing about 13% capital expenditure. Someone said it's because you are getting election year, you're going to spend on roads so that government gets elected. So, Minister, I hope that's not the case. Capital expenditure is very important. And so we need to spend on our capital expenditure. Budget deficit, this is the question that we need to answer. So there are 4 or 5 things that took us to IMF, I would say. So we have our low revenue base, our rising debt level, and the slowdown in fiscal consolidation. Slowdown in fiscal consolidation was because our budget deficit was widening. This is a function of COVID. What we have at 11% or 11.4%, a function of COVID. But we want to see this trend continuing. We have a Fiscal Responsibility Act that mandates government to spend up to about 5% in budget deficit, overspend at about 5% in budget deficit. But last year, our projected revenue was 184 billion. Our expenditure was 134 billion. So the overspend was 50 billion. Guess what's happening this year? This year, our revenue is 227 billion. Our expenditure is 177 billion. So the difference is 50 billion. So sorry. So our revenue is actually the lower, right? Yes. So our revenue is so last year our revenue was 184 billion and expenditure is 184 billion. So this year our expenditure is 227 billion and then our revenue is 176. So 50 billion last year deficit, this year to 50 billion deficit. So maybe, Madam Minister, is it a 50 billion you are playing with? So next year, are you going to do another 50 billion? Or is the case that, so we have to get to the platform. So it's a 50 billion difference budget deficit. I think what we are seeking to achieve is that we should be reducing our budget deficit year on year. So in terms of percentage-wise, we should be able to reduce the budget deficit. That is something that we say the fiscal consolidation, that's reducing the budget deficit instead of widening it. Then it helps improve the situation and then we don't get into the problems that we had before IMF. I think the debt to GDP ratio is what we have here. We are seeing a downward trend. So we went all the way up to about 7% of GDP. As we speak, we are hovering around 66.4. That's what we are hovering around. That's a remarkable improvement. Of course, it's a function of our debt restructuring. If you are able to complete the external debt restructuring, I think this will be a much more improved figure. And that's one of the key problems that we had before IMF. And I think if you're able to address them head on, it will help us. Same here as you've seen. I think our debt GDP ratio has been rising. I mean, it's a point that we've always made that is not a problem so long as we are putting the money that we are sourcing in this debt into other productive sectors that will grow the economy. If you grow the economy, our debt GDP ratio will reduce. But if you are not putting in productive sectors or capital expenditure and you are putting in current expenditure, then our debt GDP ratio will worsen. And it's a function of what we've seen: consolidation of public finances, domestic debt exchange, which we've gone through, all being painfully, and external debt restructuring, which is not completed yet, but at least as we complete that, the situation will improve. The good news is some of the rating agencies that were giving us all the bad rating now have given some rating that shows a positive light. Clearly, we are heading towards the right direction. So S&P has given us some positive rating, Moody's has given us some positive rating. Fitch says restricted default, which is still a high, which is a risk or something that we do not want. So hopefully in the next couple of months, after the appropriation bill has been passed, we should be able to see some positive improvement in this rating. It affects our rating or our ability to access credit. And this is the beginning of our journey to the international capital market if we seek to go there. So as you improve our rating, we also open the door to go to the international capital market if the plan is to go there. There are some very good initiatives that we can't look over. Youth Start program in supporting the youth in Ghana. Digital Youth Village, of course, digitalization is the drive now. National Health Insurance Scheme, of course, just making sure the marginalized in society is one of the schemes that supports, that provides support to our social protection policy. So if we are able to revamp it, it will help those who do not have access to health. Economic enclaves projects, and then we have livelihood empowerment against poverty program, which is the LEAP program. These are programs that are aimed at supporting what we call those that need social protection, the poor and the marginalized in society. Now let's look at our taxes and policies on taxation. So the taxation policy, I'll classify them into three different categories. So the first one is policies that support the green economy. So we have the green economy and the blue economy. The green economy is anything that supports protection of the environment, the green environment that we have. So electric vehicles for public transport. So waiver of import duties on the importation of electric vehicles. Or where it is a knockdown or completely knocked down electric vehicles, the import duties have been waived. It may not necessarily have impact today, but as far as we are concerned, it's a good initiative because that's the future of transport. Very soon, the companies that are producing diesel or petrol-powered vehicles will stop producing them and will start producing electric cars. So if government is introducing policy that's supposed to drive that initiative, I think it's a step in the right direction. The second is, I would say, policies that support domestication or industrialization. The first one is extension of VAT zero rating on locally manufactured textiles. I have been at a seminar where the person said, all the people in the room are wearing imported clothing. So whatever you are wearing is likely to be imported than even produced in Ghana here. So it means that it is a lot more cheaper for the person to import than to manufacture in Ghana here. Why? Because what you are importing is cheaper. And the cost of production here is high. So this is a very good initiative that will support the local industries. The second, I would say, is also waiver of import duty on raw materials for manufacturing of sanitary parts. I was involved in an event for the International Day of the Girl Child. And some of the findings that came out of that event was that, look, some girls in some rural areas are not able to go to school for about a week or two. They are in their menses because they can't afford part of 10 cedis or even 15 cedis or 20 cedis. And now when you take off the taxes, those parts that are selling for 20 cedis come all the way down to 12 cedis. And so they can't afford it and they stay out of school. So that's a very good initiative. And then also the next point is import duty on import of agricultural machinery, equipment and imports, medical consumables, and raw material for the pharmaceutical industry. If you look at our inflation that was reported recently, you realize that part of it or significant component of it is food inflation. The food inflation factor is driven by cost of inputs, cost of fertilizers, cost of equipment. So if you have a policy like this, a very good initiative, I think as you pass the appropriation bill, we should find out which of these agricultural products drive the cost of food and ensure that those are getting the benefit. You know, sometimes when you apply it broadly, you may not get the benefit, but which parts of agricultural product or equipment will have the significant impact. Then we do that. But a few others like expansion of environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging, industrial and vehicle emissions. So that's what we call emission tax. I think these are all very good initiatives that are supporting the green economy, domestication, and local industries. There are a few others that are around the use of Commissioner General certified invoice basis for all deductible income taxes, income tax expenses, and the fact that there was also review of individual income tax band to reflect the minimum wage. I think this point, when I mentioned it somewhere, Madam Minister, someone said, I need now, after increasing by 23%, we wipe the band, they will take the money back from them. So this is it's something that I guess we advise that if you review the band, we are not reviewing the band to take the money back, but we are reviewing it to make sure that there's money in the pockets of people. So that's the idea. So I think that's the question I was asked. So obviously, we would address that when we come to the forum. So there's the last section. Please, you've got the Deloitte budget snapshot. So what we have here, you can scan it. You also have it on your desk. Those of you who are in the room and those who are online, you can scan it and get the budget snapshot. Later, all those who registered to attend this event, we will send you the detailed presentation. So the detailed presentation will have, or detailed presentation will have our analysis, our commentary on the budget, and what we expect government to do as they move from the budget statement to an appropriation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yao. Those are some very insightful snapshots. I believe we are going to have the opportunity to discuss them in detail. For now, we will be setting up our panelists to get into the meat of today's event, which is to have a detailed panel discussions of the various proposals in the budget. But before that, kindly permit me to acknowledge the presence of some dignitaries amongst us. We have in our midst Mr. Alex Ochiri, who is the MD at MultiChoice. Thank you for joining us. We also have Jerry Ibusei, a senior manager with Newmont Ghana. We have Richard Obubi, director, Feed the Future Ghana. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're here and we have not acknowledged you, it doesn't mean much. Once we take note of your details, we will do that as we go along. There are various proposals in the budget, and as I have indicated, our panelists will assist us digest and draw useful insights of all those proposals. At least from an overview perspective, we know there's something on growth strategy that government is implementing or seeking to implement, targeted at some particular sectors, and to drive local production, supplement already existing import substitution policies, improve our exports, and overall improve our foreign exchange reserves. There's also the ever perennial challenge of our budget deficit. It's been relatively more challenging since the COVID year, and for obvious reasons. There's also IMF now. We won't go, we are there now. Hopefully, we are able to navigate the storm and attain some fiscal discipline. There's also DDEP. Government works will call it DDEP, but some of us will call it haircut. And some was telling me that even though he had Sakura, he also got the haircut. I wonder there are some issues relating to the financial sector as well that we look at. There are various tax proposals. The one that we have taken note really has to do with the exemptions. Some have indicated that those exemptions will not have immediate impact. Some have also described it as very useful. I think Yao has also touched on them in various ways. Overall, in terms of the indication that we put from the budget, it appears we want to combine macroeconomic stability with growth. When we look at this years, particularly pre-COVID, we had impressive growth rates before COVID visited, and then Ukraine, Russia war. Now we have Israel, Palestine, and we are hoping that that will also not come in here. Can stay on our part. Okay, so at this point, I think we are ready to have our discussion. So I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists. I'll start with Honorable Abna Osei. I think I don't have to go through a profile again. Honorable Abna Osei is the current Deputy Minister of Finance. Honorable, kindly join us here. We have Mr. Johnny is the current CEO of the Ghana Association of Bankers. We also have in our midst Madame Adubwa Isiama Abuaji, who is the Vice Chair, Association of Ghana Industries. Yeah. We also have in our midst one who has become a constant face of our dialogue, Godfred Bobkin, the economist and professor of finance at the University of Ghana. Also from Deloitte, we have Yao Apialati, who is our lead financial advisory partner in Ghana. We also have Gideon IEO, who is also a tax partner at Deloitte in Ghana. Gideon, kindly join us. All right, thank you all for joining us. For our non-Deloitte friends, special thanks to you because you've always heeded to our call, and we are here once again. We want to quickly look at some key aspects of the budget. First, I want to start from Prof. We want you to give us your view of the budget, an overview of where we're going, considering where we've come from. The context is that we were doing very well. Then we had some external shocks, which had us going southwest. Now we seek to jump on the IMF ship, and we began to see some recovery already. The question is, how strong are the drivers, underlying this recovery? Are we able to pursue on that path, and what should we prioritize? Macroeconomic stability or economic growth?
All right. Good morning, everyone. All protocols observed. Honorable Minister, thank you very much. I've said before that I admire how you have been very calm in the face of all that is happening. So thank you very much. And Deloitte, thank you very much for having me here. So I'm looking at the 2024 budget from 3 different levels. One, I'm looking at it that is the president's last budget. So that tells me a certain expectation I want to have, and that this is your last budget. If you have something left, if there's anything that you feel Ghanaians should remember you for, this is it. This is where we can have it. And I'm also linking that to the party manifesto in the run-up to 2020. Because really there's no legal basis. I'm not a lawyer. I don't say legal basis for the manifesto. The only way the manifesto gets implemented is through the budget. So if there's anything left from the promises of 2020, I want to see it reflected in the 2024 budget. That is how I'm looking at it. Then the third level is that if the government really wants to break the 8, then we are looking at the 2024 budget being an election victory budget. Again, that also tells you a certain expectation of how government intends to navigate its way through and all of that. Those are a bit more prospective, but I want to start from where we are now in terms of the progress. I think that given that we are driven by the data, you cannot look at the data and say that we have not made some progress, because the data support that. The data supports some level of recovery. Yeah. That said, you want to say that we have recovered when you see all the numbers are supporting each other and complementing each other, reinforcing each other, and they are broad-based. So let's look at, for instance, inflation. So inflation at 35.2, or if we end the year 31.3, is still very high by world average, right? And then also you are looking at it across regional distribution. Look at it across districts and see whether that recovery, the stability is broadening, right? And or is concentrating in certain areas. If you take, for instance, food inflation, of course, October food inflation came down to 44%, but then you want to look at the regional differences, and then you drop down to district level. You see that food inflation in Northeast is still more than 64%. Eastern region is more than 60%, and the rest of them. So you see the regional differences. Now, what is a bit concerning also is that some of those areas where food inflation is very high historically have been more or less like our food basket region. So we can see that in the food basket regions, you see food inflation is that very high, then it should tell you that it's not that strong, right? It's not supported from the base, unless probably we are certain specific interventions, we are complementing that from other areas. So that is another thing that we want to take into consideration. So how do we sustain this and broaden that, right? To do that, you may not require a general policy. We're also at a stage where we need targeted policies. Right, beyond the general policies, you want targeted policies with a certain intention to cause change in certain key subsectors of the economy that will bring the kind of desired growth that you expect. So we can improve on that. The other bit is to look at maybe the depreciation. So if let's say depreciation will be very high in terms of percentage, right? But if you look at this year, if you are moving from a higher base to another higher base, even the depreciation rate is small, the effect is very high because you are moving from a higher base to the other. So that is how we are looking at the impact if you're looking at the pass-through. So it tells you that there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot that we have to do. Now, if you also see because of what price has done, inflation has done, and we look at the jump in CapEx allocation, in real terms, actually we have not made progress. Okay, so that is again, I'm looking at the allocations, right? So you are looking at allocations that in terms of the percentage increase is behind price development. So actually you see that this is just to compensate you for price, but in terms of real stock, you are not really making advancement. And then, so if you look at what inflation rate has done since the beginning, the third quarter of 2021 to date, the level of allocation we have to do in order to offset price development and begin to talk about real advancement is huge. That tells you, and so that should give us an impression that yes, we are making some progress, but there's a lot that we have to do, and that we need to come together and improve on that. Then the other thing I want to say is that the minister was right when she said that the DPP has created a fiscal space of about 61 billion. Right. The question is, how do we utilize that fiscal space? And I want to see that strongly. For something that was as painful as DDEP, we can take that pain into joy by deciding to utilize that fiscal space in a certain developmental way, that every time DDEP is mentioned, we can point to ABC and the rest of them. Otherwise, this is how various stakeholders will interpret that fiscal space, this fiscal space. So obviously, by strengthening the bargaining power and they have a bit more increment, this is the space that they are taking. And by the time you realize, instead of using that space to change our expenditure structure, okay, and as Mr. Pierre mentioned already, we've seen that compensation has taken the lead. Okay, and so we need to take advantage of that space. And if we're able to complement that with the progress that we make from external debt restructuring, let's begin to change that expenditure rigidity around compensation and then interest payment, so that we begin to have real allocation to CAPEX and other specific interventions that can actually ease the restrictions on the growth drivers of the economy. That is how I'm looking at it. Then let's look at how countries entered into COVID and how they came out. So if we are looking at Ghana's performance, we can compare ourselves to our regional peers, structural peers, aspirational peers, and superstar peers, right? So if you compare ourselves to even regional, you can see that even though we've seen the recovery, but it's below what our regional peers are doing. If you compare that also to our structural peers, meaning that they have similar structural bottlenecks and the rest of them, the likes of COVID and the rest of them, if you see after COVID, doing better than some of them. Some of them actually recorded negative growth in GDP, but Ghana recorded a positive one. But if you see after 2020, the level of progress that they are making, it tells you that there's a lot that we have to do. So overall, I think that we've made some progress. Your question was also about should we choose macroeconomic stability or growth? There's a school of thought that believes that you can have growth in the absence of macroeconomic stability. That is not a bit dominant. The dominant view is that macroeconomic stability is a precondition for growth. Okay, so, but Ghana's problem is that we have not been able to guarantee macroeconomic stability for a long time. So there's a graph in the budget about the performance of Ghana stock exchange. You see it going up suddenly, then it just drops like a child who is learning how to write, right? So so when you see that, it's very good. So the question is, we have to do the right thing consistently, which is good for planning, and that is what the problem. So I think that we need macroeconomic stability, but it's not an end in itself. It's only a means to an end. The question is, how do we sustain that? And the macroeconomic stability we have now, we are not there yet. We are not there yet. Okay. And let's also remember that disruptions is very costly. So typically, if you are managing governments, we have shocks. It could be internal, it could be external, but your own policy should not complement investing in it. Otherwise, the cost of correcting it can be very high, and it could also take a long time. And that is the price. Macroeconomic stability is coming to us at a greater cost today. Part of that is the haircut. But that thing I want to put across is this, based on data. Since 1992, we've seen a combination of elections, slippages, external shocks, commodity shocks, and the rest of them. In the time past, we were taking about 2 years after every major election to correct the slippages and the rest of them. from 2012, the data is telling us that within 4 years, we couldn't recover from the excesses of 2012. It took us to the IMF, which was our 16th IMF supported program, which kicked in from April 2015 to April 2019. And then, so we exited that program. We couldn't restore debt sustainability. Then we have the latest one. Now look at what is happening now. The traditional tool that we had used in correcting those challenges had been fiscal consolidation, expenditure restraint, revenue enhancement. Now it's at the stage where fiscal adjustment alone is not enough to restore. And that is why now we are doing debt treatment in addition to structural reform. You know, the message to the business community is that when the country shifts, the best drifts from traditional fiscal adjustments correction method to the second level, if we are not careful, it becomes another more like this. And then something will come. So let's not take for granted that the recruitment we are seeing is coming at a great price, for which reason we need to treasure it, for which reason we need to do the right thing to support that. Overall, I would say that the 2024 budget wasn't that ambitious for me, given that it's the president's last budget. That if there's anything the president had left in his list, he wants to, this is it, how he wants to be remembered. Then again, also, we have not largely the IMF dictates, and I have a bit of an issue there. The IMF is more about stability, but we are looking for something beyond stability. We are looking at job-rich growth. To the extent that inflation can come down, we've checked the IMF box, but at what cost? How do we complement the measures in the IMF-supported program with growth-enhancing interventions? And I'm looking at it, but it's not just as we are in this room, because some of the things we are doing right now, the effect will show up in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time. So we should be laying a certain kind of foundation right now. And in this case, Ghana has been laying foundation since 1992. Okay, and I'm still wondering what kind of foundation we have been. Check almost all the budgets. Okay, especially when there's a regime change, we are laying a foundation, and we are still at that foundation. So we are going to build a notice, so we have to spend like 30 years laying foundation. Okay, so this is also the outlook. We are told by forecasts that by 2040, our population will reach 45 million. So for me, that is more of a concern to policymakers today than maybe tomorrow. And then that population, 58% of that population will be less than 30 years. That should tell us something, right? So, of course, Africa is a young continent. We are going to get more younger. What would they be looking for? They probably that 58% of that 45 million people would have finished free senior high school, going through the tertiary and through the labor market. The question is, how is this recovery creating that enabling environment for a job-rich growth? And what I want to say probably for this first round is that, Honorable Minister, we are at a stage where we are not going to celebrate GDP growth anymore, because that is insufficient. So when you tell us that our economy in terms of GDP, we are crossing 1 trillion Ghana cedis, and a normal circumstance that should call for celebration, right? But how inclusive is that? How much of that is reflected in the pocket of the ordinary Ghanaian on the streets? So we can turn the corner along different corners, but until the last Ghanaian on the street has turned the corner, no corner has been turned. So the question is, how do you rope in every Ghanaian, right? Because last year alone, inflation inspired poverty was more than 800,000. So if we are implementing this budget, how many people will this budget lift out of poverty? How would this budget narrow inequality? How will this budget reduce food inflation drastically. The average Ghanaian spends between 42 to 44% of their household expenditures on food. So if you want to help the Ghanaian, the first way is through the math. So food has to be available, it has to be cheap and of quality. So those are the things. Once we begin to do that, then we are presenting some kind of fiscal space at the household level. And then as for the taxes, I've said this several times, so I don't want to, Honorable Minister, this is my conclusion about Ghana's tax environment. What we have is not born out of tax policy. Across the ports and all consumption-based indirect taxes, this is a state-sponsored robbery that steals fiscal space across households and then private sector. And when we do that consistently, what we are doing is that we will end up creating a financially repressed society that would also not contribute to savings. And while any country that is not saving is not accumulating capital, and once individuals, households are not saving, they are not. Oh, okay, thank you. I will go home. I'll go and share the rest with my family. So, find out. So, any country that is not saving, is not accumulating capital. So, when you see economic opportunities, can only be taken up by foreign capital, and that is how you see the foreign dominance in practically every aspect of our economy. So, thank you. I'll send the rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. That's very detailed. So I'll move to Honorable Abner. Let's stay on growth. It looks like government is also prioritizing growth, targeting selected sectors as we've seen. But we noted a particularly interesting trend with the growth in industry or growth of the industry sector. In 2020, there was a 15% growth recorded. In 2021, up to, I think now, we've not recorded any significant growth. The growth has been less than 2% across, and the 2023 half-year growth is actually a contraction of 2%. We are trying to juxtapose that with all the flagship, policies targeted at growing industry. 1D1F is said to have put out some 169 factories out there. There are various import substitution policies that are supposed to also encourage local production and to revamp industry. We're trying to understand this seeming paradox. How come we are not seeing commensurate, growth in industry when we look at all the policies over the years that have been, implemented? And please don't be as long as Prof. If you can keep it between 3 to 5 minutes.
You also want me to take mine home. Thank you very much. Prof, I don't think paying import duties is a state-sponsored robbery. In every situation, every society, there are issues, there are leakages, and people take advantage of that. And I believe that is why we are introducing digitalization at the ports to make sure we reduce. Yes, we have begun. We will get there, but we are not there yet. So during the post-budget workshop, the Speaker of Parliament said something. We all want good things for our country. We all want to put in policies and measures that will promote growth and everything. But we ask ourselves, how about our attitude? You understand? You've been given a position, a job. You're supposed to collect taxes at a certain place. You go and you have a different attitude. And then this person does it, that person does it. Before you realize, it becomes a huge thing that is affecting the nation. So it's about our attitude too. What we want to see, we will also have to start mimicking it or behaving in that way. And I believe that we will get there. Yes, you talked about the industry, but clearly the other sectors of the economy are doing well, agri, and then the services industry, because for them, with the shock of and the Russian-Ukraine war, they were able to recover very quickly compared to the industry. You mentioned that yes, in 2023, first half, industry has contracted by about 2.2%, with the exception of mining and quarrying. All the others we have seen a dip in that. And it is not just taxes, but industry also complains of making themselves competitive. And by making themselves competitive, they need to have access to relatively cheaper cost of source of capital. And you heard me say that government is going to work with DBG, work with Council, and MGI, make sure we try as much as possible to bring in some relatively cheaper source of financing to enable our industry also have access to it. That's set aside. Government is also introducing certain reliefs in that sector to make sure they are relatively their counterparts elsewhere. We haven't gotten there yet. We have begun something, and if we should go through in the 2024 budget approval, it will go a long way to also address the low rates that we see in the industry. The 1D1F, yes, it is a flagship program that government sought to bring in to fill that gap. They were supply chain disruptions and all the other things that industry do face. And currently we also have 1D1F as part of that supposed to get some level of exemptions. And this has been stuck in Parliament for about 18 months or so, about 21 or 22 firms. And so all these things are affecting 1D1F flagship program. We are hoping that we'll be able to clear this to enable these companies also start producing for us to see some growth in the industry. In the industry sector. But one thing that I also believe will help in that sector is to create an enabling environment, and that is the macroeconomic stability that we are looking for. Because the exchange rate depreciation affects them, inflation rate affects them. So that is why the focus of government for 2024 is to entrench the recovery that we have made, stabilize the economy so that industry can also grow. For the agric, it was very, very easy for them to return back to the way they were doing things. And for the services sector, it was during COVID that most of the services sector even saw a huge boost in their profits, but it didn't go for the industry because some had to shut down. As they shut down, they were able to come back. So we're looking at all these things. Dr. said, mentioned that beyond 2022, how have we recovered or how have we responded to the recovery of COVID-19? Some countries have gone ahead, but I think we are also progressing, and we need the support of everybody to make sure we are able to progress, recover, and then put our industry on a ground footing that will promote the jobs and raise the revenue that we are looking for. These are my preliminary comments, please.
Madam Odili, I need you to jump in here. In relation to that same background around growth, we've seen, many other policies in time past, but the challenge has always been with implementation. And so the question is, are you able to share some? So the question is, what are some of the key implementation risks you foresee with regards to the implementation of government growth strategy? How can government eliminate or mitigate these risks to ensure successful implementation?
Thank you very much. I'd like to continue from where she left off with the growth and the industry and tackling the 1D1F, 160 million companies, right? The question is, if we have all these companies there, how come we had a contraction in industry? And I think some of the factors that could have led to this are that most of these companies are not manufacturing at full capacity. Most of them are doing a fraction of their installed capacity because the macroeconomic stability is not there. That's a environment that's not there. Disposable income to buy is equally not there. So you have industry set up They are operating at maybe 50% of their installed capacity. You have fixed costs that are coming every time you have to take care of. And so these are really affecting the production of these companies. And it's natural that for every manufacturing concern, there is that curve where initially they would have to suffer some losses, and at a point, they will break even before profits come in. So I think basically industry hasn't been able to produce volumes enough to reach that critical mass. And so it wouldn't reflect in our industry sector performance. And that is part of the reason why we are seeing the 2.2% contraction. Then again, we're looking at support, deepening support for government. With the budget, we have seen certain tax waivers. But beyond the tax waivers, we need support. When I say support, I'm making reference to what we are expecting, the input substitution that is now being termed as export promotion, right? Export what? Okay, export-led. And so if you give the tax waivers to the industries and you still do not support them, protect them, then you would have the case where imported goods will still find their way onto the market and come and compete with these imported ones. Then we're looking at financing. We mentioned the development bank. Currently, interest rate is over 30%. And if industry is supposed to go to this market for cost of financing, then it's become very difficult trying to operate and then still be above the water. And so we realize that it is not helping. But the development bank is supposed to have been able to lend at a much lower rate. However, the development partners are foreign. And so you have maybe the European Union, GIZ, coming in with foreign currency. So if we borrow at foreign currency and we are supposed to lend in cedis at a lower rate, but the rate is depreciating, the cedi is depreciating against the dollar, then there should be some sort of adjustment. And so the rate of lending to businesses is automatically adjusted upwards. So at the end of the day, you come back to the same point where industry have difficulty in borrowing and being able to expand. And so we are hoping that beyond the tax reliefs that have been given, during the application, we would also come and make some input so that that protection will be there for industries to be able to move on to the next step. I'm sure other issues would come in, but let me just add this. For example, the automobile sector. There was this policy, automotive policy, and investors were given assurance that, look, let me put it this way, they were enticed to invest with certain assurances that beyond the tax waivers you'll be given, we are going to protect you by giving raising import duty to 35% for imported vehicles. We're going to ban overaged vehicles 10 years and beyond. We're going to ban salvage vehicles. People have started assembling vehicles since 2021 or early 2022, and there is no show. These things haven't been done. So government hasn't fulfilled fully the commitments that were made to these businesses to do the investment. AAAG, the Automobile Association of Ghana, for example, is not happy about some of these things because you have a sector, those dealing in used vehicles, complaining that, look, this is going to put us out of business. We are saying that, okay, if banning or increasing import duty to 35% is a problem, then let's segregate it. Maybe vehicles up to 5 years should be increased. Then 6 years to 10 years should be maintained at the current tax rate as they are. Because these young vehicles, if I say young, I'm referring to the used vehicles from a year to 5 years, are good enough to compete with the new vehicles on the market. and we need to protect this investment. And so if we're going to protect this investment, I have seen Toyota do some collaboration with University of Ghana, School of Engineering. Royal Motors is doing similar thing with TVET. And Japan Motors has also started something with Whole Technical University. And so they are going all out to collaborate with academia to get things done and train our people. But we need to protect them. If not, we'll be living in circles. Government has the appetite to industrialize, but it's finding it very difficult to take that hard decision. And I'm wondering, in November 2023, as we enter 2024, would we have the will to take that hard decision and say that this is the time? Let's increase the tax. Let's increase the tax on vehicles, and then we can protect the assembling and make sure that we are able to produce. I can say for a fact that some of the assembling plants are producing 30%. The facility is there, money has been spent. We are not producing what we are supposed to produce. So it tells you that indeed we're losing a lot.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Olivia. That's very insightful. I think we can talk about budget deficit now. You seem to have pointed out that there's about 50 billion or so that has to be funded in deficits. And we've also seen in the budget that the government wants to take certain initiatives, including collaborating with credit rating agencies to conduct sovereign rating assessment, etc. But in your view, what other measures can government consider as we plan to return to the international capital market to fund the budget deficit?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned or go through the problems that I mentioned before. So what took us out of the international capital market and obviously started our economic challenges about 4 or 5 things. So the first one is our low revenue base. So we have to address our low revenue base. Obviously, there are some initiatives that we can adopt. I was listening to the deputy minister over the weekend, and one area we mentioned is property rates. So the properties will have to be valued, and obviously we start operationalizing that. That has been in the budget in the last 2 years, but we haven't seen that operationalized. So it's a very good opportunity. People have properties that even have to pay the property rates on them, but they are not being exercised. Nobody is coming to them, and there's no process for them to pay the property rate. So it's an opportunity for government to take advantage of, get local authorities to go through a challenge. I can give you an example that if you say your allocation to a particular district assembly is subject to a certain percentage of collection in property rates, you see the competition. They'll go chasing people to pay their property rates so that at least they also get the allocation. So I think that's a way to enhance. So that's our increasing or enhancing our revenue base. The second one is what we've mentioned before, is slow down in fiscal consolidation. So over and over again, we say to government that we should look at our expenditure. So it's not just about cutting them, because when we cut expenditure, it's likely to affect and may be counterproductive. So where it's possible or necessary to cut, we should cut. But if you have to spend, you have to spend strategically on areas that will increase the productive sectors of our economy and improve our GDP. The third one is our rising debt levels. And I think that was an issue before we went to the IMF. And now we are seeing a downward trend in our debt levels. What we need to do now is to accelerate the process of engaging our external lenders and complete that process. I have been in discussions, or I've met lenders on projects that we are working on in Southern Africa region. And some of the insurance companies I met, they said they had invested in Ghana bonds. Ghana bonds were one of the best investment that they had, but they had to write off a significant portion because we were going through this program. So what the guy said to me was that, look, they want certainty. When are we completing this program? And when do they have certainty to even continue investing in other securities that are coming from Ghana? So I think that's then we have to accelerate well. And the last thing, it's all about issues around addressing our inflation and exchange rate problem. If we are able to complete the process of getting the IMF tranche come through, because you have, let's say, a headmaster in the house, he's assessing you based on certain parameters. So we should ensure that we are meeting the parameters, getting the tranches as they have been earmarked for us. They improve our cash flow situation and they also improve our forex situation. So address the two Trump problem that I mentioned, exchange rate and inflation. So if you're able to go through this, I think we will be on the path of a stronger recovery than we are currently seeing.
Thank you very much, yeah, but let me stay with you. At this time on the IMF, you mentioned IMF in your submission, and I want you to help us address this bit of the IMF deal. The government is supposed to be engaging with bilateral lenders currently, foreign lenders, but a component of that is bilateral lenders. We understand we are not the only country in that regard. Some other African countries have already taken the lead. You have Chad, Zambia, Ethiopia. Are there lessons Ghana can learn from these countries?
Yes, so thank you very much. So prior to let's say Zambia going to the IMF program, Zambia was the first African country to default on their debt post-COVID. So after COVID, some African countries started having challenges, and the first country to default was Zambia. So out of the list that you have, Zambia was the first to run to the IMF. But IMF program, Zambia had inflation rate of about 24%. The kwacha, that's the local currency, was the worst performing currency in the world. And then at the time, they also had economic or fiscal discipline issues. As we speak, they successfully went through a debt restructuring program. About 1.4 billion of their debt was restructured through the IMF support or with IMF support. Today, Zambia's inflation is around 9%. So they have achieved a single-digit inflation. Kwacha is one of the best performing currency. So at the time they went to the IMF, the kwacha was about 22 kwacha to the dollar. It skipped down to about 16 kwacha to the dollar. It's about 40% reduction or improvement or appreciation of the local kwacha. So I think the countries that are taking advantage of the IMF program, and then we use that to improve our economic situation. They went through also a painful restructuring process, but obviously they successfully went through, and their debt situation has improved. There are a lot of investment opportunities that has come through, and I think one thing that the government is also doing, so the point I made earlier, they are getting a lot of to support their strategic industries. So they have an area they call the copper belt, just like we have in Ghana here, the mining area, they also copper. That's one of their primary resources, and the copper belt extension program is almost like free zones. You have dedicated industries to operate there, and that are supporting industry that are operating the copper belt, similar to the free zones enclave. So we have policies or programs that support because all those are the as what we get very currency and improves our macroeconomic program. So
very much, yeah. Honorable. Yeah, that's a very good one. We see similarities with certain policies in the budget in terms of the enclave. What government wants to do with that. Honorable, I want you to touch on some aspect of the IMF deal for us. The minister reading the budget in Parliament mentioned that we are currently discussing with foreign lenders, and it appears that has taken a bit longer. I mean, our guess is that there are some complexities in there. You have bilaterals, you have other, private institutions, perhaps subgroups that you need to engage, and they might all not come to the same, conclusion. So if you can quickly share with us some of the complexities, in those engagements, and realistically, how soon we can expect to reach an agreement with those with the bilateral lender or the foreign lenders. And also briefly, I don't know whether I should call it assurances, because next year is an election year. We are supposed to also maintain a certain level of fiscal discipline whilst being on the IMF program. So the question is, how does government intend to maintain that level of discipline, considering what next year represents to us?
Thank you. I will just add on to what Yao said before I go to one. Zambia did not do a domestic debt exchange. So you have to state it in that context, and that's how come their recovery is faster. They did not do domestic debt exchange. And two, their borrowings were mostly with China. So it was very, very easy for them to conclude on their external debt exchange. Unfortunately for us, it is not just China. that we have that are bilateral partners. We also have other partners, and so that is why clearly it is different from ours. And if you would remember also, I think we, as in Ghana, we went ahead and then we got financing assurances for bilateral partners even before Zambia did. But unfortunately for us, because we are many and just one major bilateral partner, it's very easy dealing with one person and dealing with 10 or 12 people when situations like this arise. And so that's the reason why it looks like we haven't been able to control on this one, but it is something that countries where they are governed by just one people, you see Rwanda, you see all these places. It's very, very easy for development and things like this to move on. But you have very people with different views on things. We are hopeful because when we need them to get that assurance for even that to come, they were there for us. They gave us that assurance. And so we are very hopeful. In the last first IMF review, I think we went through successfully. We went through all the structural benchmarks, we went through all the quantitative measures and everything, with the exception of the IPPs where we still trying as much as possible to reform another year. We had a staff level agreement by the 6th of October. And so from our part, as the people of Ghana, we have done what is expected of us. From the IMF part, we have also done what is expected of us, of them, and we are waiting for our bilateral partners. But I am hopeful because we needed them to give us that assurance to enable the IMF to put us on that program. They were there for us. And clearly, for us, it is China and quite a number of other bilateral partners. And so we are working together with them on the common framework to see to that we come out with situations that best serves everybody's interest. It's not just our interest that we're looking at. It has to serve everybody's interest because we are in this together. It's one global world and we need to support each other. But at the same time, it shouldn't be that we make others worse off. And so we are very hopeful that it is going to happen. Really looking forward to that. What was this?
Sorry, the election year.
The election year, yes. The election year, I mentioned that, yes, this year is not going to be like our election year, we see slippages. And the reason why I want to consolidate the recovery that we have made, and consolidating the recovery, fiscally disciplined. And like I mentioned, when we look at our budgets, usually in a penitentiary, we have 30, 40 commercially funded projects that we put in there, and then we look for commercial funds to fund these projects. But nothing like that in the first place. Second, government is making sure that we end the year with a surplus primary balance. And in doing this, we match our current revenue to our current expenditure. And so if there is a positive in our current revenue and expenditure, we are going to pay interest on the basis of a negative amount. That again is also going to help us. Again, for any reason, if for any reason we have to back on the project, it has to go through the due process. And not just government of Ghana, but even SOEs. Because in the recent assessment of our debts, when you saw our debt movement of some had to do debt that government had to take on for SOEs. And so as part of that, of the commitment, we take up what is necessary, what will be approved for us in the application, which is around 259. SOEs may not have to go out and look for new commercial ones to fund their projects. And I also mentioned that this time, government was, through the support of all stakeholders, had been able to negotiate the base pay. That base pay for 2023 increased from 7% to 30%. So you can imagine a huge increase. In 2021, there was a 4% increase in base pay. In 2022, there was a 7% increase in base pay. And then in 2023, a 30%. And we did this after we had sent the budget to Parliament. But this time, we have curtailed that. And so agitations from the labor funds to increase our compensation when what has been represented in the budget is very minimal. And so these are some of the things that we believe that if we should do, it will go a long way to help us live within the application that will be given to us. And also, if we stick to the targets that we have agreed with the IMF for the second phase, like we have done in the first review, that will also help us ensure the expenditure situation, so that when we don't go over the application that has been given to us. It's not an idea, it's the support of the people of Ghana. How to do this together so that you don't come, there's no budget or us to fix a road in front of your house. You go heaven and earth to make sure we write that contract for you to fix the road because it will get your car. These are some of the little things that people do. That if you don't fix this road, I'm not going to do this. So it is up to all of us, our attitude towards these things, the support that we're going to give government to make sure that government is able to implement the 2024 budget. A lot depends on us. So we need that support.
Thank you.
Certain classes and courses, especially that it's not for and that will be the back of government.
As for that pressure, it's unavoidable. So Prof, and before I come to John, there are a lot of questions for you. And so I'm going to treat you special. Let me get back to Prof. Prof, this time 2 to 3 minutes. You have a lot, but 2 to 3 minutes. There's this seeming paradox around the situation we are in, and we have to increase revenue significantly. There's a talk of improving our revenue to GDP ratio. If we are going to be fiscally disciplined, we need to be able to mobilize revenue, of course, as well as rationalizing expenditure. And so the question is, how you already talked about our tax regime, how it appears to be very punitive with individuals and corporate. So how do we balance things? How do we get around revenue mobilization without burdening corporates and individuals with taxes? And also on the expenditure side, if there are a few things you want to say to government in terms of how best we can rationalize the expenditure.
Okay, thank you very much. So when we say we are overburdened with taxes, that is not to suggest the state should not collect taxes. The approach and the manner and the tax handles we use are very important. But let me start off this way. Okay.
Unfortunately, I have to leave because we have begun the debate in Parliament and I'm being asked to come over. And so I'd like to use this opportunity to thank you so much for giving us this platform every time to explain government policies. We look forward to positive feedback from you and the support to help us implement this budget. Don't force us to make any concessions that we cannot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so Honorable, I think I can continue now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for the advice.
So let's look at it from 2 different levels. The narrative that we have not developed because we have not collected enough tax revenue is not true. If you look at the tax to GDP ratio Ghana has accommodated since 1992, if we were efficient in the utilization of that tax revenue, the development outcome should be much bigger and of quality than this. So Ghana's problem over the years, in as much as revenues have been low, is largely corruption, inefficiency, infractions in our procurement, contract overvaluation. That is it. And I'm saying this because if you look at, we have the data, Ghana, Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea, from the late 70s, all the way up to 2022. If you look at the tax to GDP ratio of Malaysia, Singapore, and you compare that to Ghana, you don't see much significant difference in terms of tax to GDP ratio. So in fact, at some point in time, Ghana's tax to GDP ratio was higher than Malaysia and Singapore. What brought it down was the rebasing, right? So we rebased the economy, so the denominator expanded, and then you see that the outcome variable came down. So at some point in time, we're doing far better than Singapore in terms of tax to GDP ratio. And in the last couple of years, you see that the tax to GDP ratio largely have been below 16%. But look at the development outcome. Okay, so if we don't do something about the inefficiencies in our public investment, the corruption, and the rest of them, we can tax even the air that we breathe. We may not get the results that we expect out there. And Ghana's problem is not the fact that, look, and if we say tax to GDP ratio is low, that is not all that we spend. We complement that with borrowing. So look at the expenditure. Look at the expenditure to GDP over and compare that to like Malaysia and Singapore and the rest of them. So you see that we have been largely inefficient. And I'll give you an example. Pick Ghana's budget. We don't need 2 minutes, so I'll finish very soon with votes. Pick Ghana's budget since 1992 and account for Ghana's road stock on paper. Roads we have constructed on paper, it runs into billions of dollars. But when we go out there, the roads are not there. What are these roads? They are in people's stomach, and the rest of them. This is the problem. So you see, look at cocoa board roads. Look at the roads cocoa board has. Where are those roads? And how can we pay for them? So this is where we should focus on. And then, look, in government, I've heard a certain man saying that he will govern with 60. We will not accept that. Government after 2024 should have more than 40 ministers. We have to get to the point where the state must determine what we can support and what the operational budget, and strike a good balance between the current and growth enhancing spending. Other than that, we will not make the much needed progress. Then finally, the minister was saying that they will try and be fiscally disciplined next year. That will not happen. It's not like we don't trust our government. I hope that's okay. You see, the data since 1992, the competitive elections we've had, the benefit of being in academia is that we have the data. And we can look at the data over time and see our behavior. With the exception of 2004, we didn't comply with fiscal discipline. If you see the fiscal slippages of 2008, 2000, 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, all those competitive elections, and that MF program is not what will make the difference. I will tell you what happened. Last 2016, we were under an MF program. It's almost similar to what we have now. The first year progress we made from 2015 to the election year, we used the election year to reverse everything. So in the 2016 election, the MF program was practically off. To bring it back, we had to extend the year. So that program was supposed to end April 2018, but we ended April 2019. This is what will happen. You keep calm. You see, right now, the speaker was complaining that the majority MPs were in the parliament. They after vote, not on their own. Because of what is happening in the party, you have to go and campaign. So what we do in Ghana is that the last 4 months of all the competitive election years, nobody manages anything. Budget execution, budget tracking is very low. Right, because they are all after votes. And so it's when we are with the election that we start counting. Then we see contract that will be awarded on 31st, maybe 30th October. And construction that will start midnight, running into the following election. Okay, right in front of the community, and after the election, everything goes on. So you see contract and other things that would emerge. And also compliance issues are a bit low in an election year because there will be some level of pressure on them so that they don't offend people, because if you put pressure on them, it has implications for vote. Politicians will not trade the votes for fiscal discipline.
Thank you very much. This is as real as it gets. So let me get to John now. John, so there are a long list of DDP related questions for you and its impact on the banking industry and the financial sector in general. There's been reports that the banking industry looks to have come out of the woods, or maybe not, but in terms of the reports we've seen mid-year 2023, it looks like the banking sector is reporting profits. But we know that the impact really would be realized if that translates into onto the private sector. let's talk about access to credit. Access to credit. We're asking what measures do you think the government should adopt to support the effort of the banking sector in improving access of credit to the private sector?
Yeah, thank you very much. To tackle your question, let me just take just 30 seconds. In review, as a country, we are where we are. Successful governments, as a country, unless the problems that confront us, what we don't or we don't want to see or execute is what to do to reverse the negative implication of these problems that if we don't solve, we will go to IMF every 4 or 5 years. The composition of the GDP alone, and you see various problems staring you in the face. Our GDP composition is jaundiced, completely jaundiced. We have a GDP of a developed world, a tertiary world. We are a poor country with services sector with what, 46% or thereabout. I saw your graph. I don't have any plan of correcting that. Between 2023 and 2027, we are still going to do that trend where service sector is leading in the GDP composition. What kind of environment are we going to create? For the composition that we have now, what jobs have been created? And we don't have any plan. And it pains me, to be honest, that successive government, we have not had any big plan. It doesn't happen by accident. And I'll give an example of a situation when I was in the bank, a company that we have assisted with the facility to set up a factory in Tema. Whenever I go there and I see young men, young women at the factory shop, over 3,000 of them, I say, how many hotels can employ these people? How many service industries or companies can employ these people? If we want to get people off our streets, that was not about, I don't go with what Professor Bokpi said, then the budget is not aggressive enough. It doesn't go to the heart of what is hurting the country, where as a country that is moving from agrarian, we are skipping a whole generation of development in industry, and then we are focusing on services. And now everybody's talking about green. So we are also switching completely to what the people say we should switch to, and we are going there as a country. Okay, now we come to the question. There is this, I don't know whether it's an anomaly, that when people see these results, it kind of arouses, some euphoria about the banking system. So it's we bounce back, we've done this. No, we don't take coins that easily. As you see, there are indicators that have implications for our performance. And most of those indicators are lagging indicators. If you pick something like impairment, you can take the money today and it will be staring at you tomorrow. So I see the results as good, but it's early days yet. We have a lot to build on. We have a lot of holes that we have to plug. Take one financial statements of the entire industry. Equity was around, let's say, 27 billion. We took 1 year to wipe away 19.3 billion to GDP. 19 billion out of 26 billion of the industry's equity was wiped off. So we need the kind of results we are seeing to build back so that we have a resilient financial system that can anchor what kind of development that the minister preached in parliament and all of us are talking about here. But we started, working with the government. The minister talked about the New Start, and personally, I'm deeply involved in designing the structures for the commercial end of the New Start. So the banking system is working with government in coming out with a product that is geared towards youth-oriented enterprises, to give them loans at with covenants that are easier to meet, and interest rate thresholds that are also affordable. But that issue around how do we help industry goes to the heart of the issue about the cost of credit. And the cost of credit is not like the curtain that a bank goes and draws when you want sunshine, and then they close when they want some darkness in the room. No, it doesn't work that way. It's an interplay of certain variables. So the macro fundamentals to continue in the trajectory that in the last few months we've seen inflation trending downwards, the currency having a semblance of relative stability, and that should cause the central bank to also pause in its attempt at arresting inflation by increasing the policy rate, and then gradually we will begin seeing the lending rate trending downwards. What business are you going to use a loan you take at 35% to do? So once you take that loan, you have already defaulted in the next 2, 3, 4 months. So I'm not worried if the demand in the system is low because the environment does not support it. So we need the cost of credit to come down, and I'm happy that you've seen that downward trend in inflation, and definitely the central bank has taken notice and using the tools that they normally use in arresting inflation. We should see a downward spiral of interest rate, and all of us will then become comfortable, and businesses will then be able to afford the kind of loans that the banks are offering.
Okay, thanks, John. And let me stay with you. And particularly on the structure of the economy, there's been the talk of changing the structure of our economy to one that is dominated by the industry sector. We don't seem to have made much progress. But if you look at the 3 sectors, you've got services, agri, industry. So one can intuitively suggest that if industry begins to get dominant, maybe the other sectors might be suppressed. The impact on the financial services, also the services sector in general, how do you see things playing out? Is that going to have any adverse impact on the service sector?
Not at all. Actually, to the contrary, that is rather positive. The correlation is rather positive. Pick the United Kingdom. Agri is less than 1%. Industry is about over, services is over 70%. Their GDP composition. Industry to drive even the service sector. If when the companies are around, they are at their peak, and they are scaling their operations. But you see the conferences, you see insurance, you see the financial sector also being vibrant. So it's not service before industry. It actually should be industry before services. And as banks, what will an aggressive industrial growth do? People get jobs. When they get jobs, they pay their taxes. When they pay their taxes, what happens? Government is able to spend more. And these people are now getting jobs. What do? They come to the banking system. They become credit worthy. We are able to support them. They are able to afford housing, real estate benefit. So the multiplier effect of an aggressive industrial growth can never be underestimated. And that is why I'm now saddened when I saw that it is, in my view, there will be a lot of talk, but the budget does not support the talk. If I see that the forecast GDP, I don't see any aggressive plan to change the structure. And here, let me take a step back and pose this question. How many of us are prepared to be the generation that suffers so that the next generation will benefit? Think about the history of every well-developed country. There's a generation that went in turmoil. Then we went around and still see ourselves changing. We want to change the structure of your economy. You get to a point where the cell phones you are using, manufacturing local cell phones, you get this kind of top-end cell phones to use, or you get a price that is so primitive because we want to help local manufacturing. We want to move Versace and say we want to grow textiles industry in Ghana. It doesn't happen that way. So to also be like citizens, also change our orientation and our appetite and focus to some extent on the things that would go to the bottom of my sister sitting there, so that they will pay the taxes for government to do the things, the services that we expect, our government to do. So there is no saying that we need an accelerated industrial growth for any viability to be established within the financial system, even for financial stability to be properly grounded.
Okay, just the last question for you. You talked about us needing to change our taste and preferences. On the side of the banks, what will it take to change your taste and preference for the kind of people that you lend to, government as opposed to private sector?
Of course, banks are doing a lot, and you see, because of our reporting regime, the data out there becomes very difficult to disaggregate and analyze to be able to answer very well this question that you have posed. People say the banking system lends to government. Agricultural lending is at 5% or under 5%. Lending to industry is suppressed, or private sector is not gaining. Then where is the bank's money? Where is it? You understand? It's because of the reporting regime. If somebody supplies transportation for blue skies, and as a bank, you finance the fleet of transport, what are you financing? Are you financing services, or you are financing agro-business? Because you're going to cut fruits, blue skies. So the reporting regime has a lot to do with how we see the intervention that the banking sector is making. Banks want to lend with the intention of getting the money back. So if there is a sector that is fund ready, the industry is ever ready to provide the needed assistance, because all we're interested in is a financial intermediation, giving you money, take production, get the money back so that we can give to the next person, irrespective of who you are, apart from people undertaking, illegal, businesses, and the like that we cannot support.
Thanks, John. We'll be talking about taxes right about now, but before that, I'd just like you to touch on the Ghana Financial Stability Fund, which was set up to, address capital shortfalls occasion in the financial sector by the DDEP. For banks in particular, how eagerly are you waiting for this fund to commence? Looking at how you speedily come out, or seemingly from the DDEP, from the profits that have been reported, do you actually still need it? And if you do, what will further delays due to the banking sector? Are we to face any risk if government were to, delay the implementation of the fund?
Yeah, there is no denying the fact that earlier the better, and I'm happy to say that the investment committee of the Financial Stability Fund has now been set up. Personally, I sit as a member of that committee, and we've already had meetings and considered proposals already. So things are moving. Yeah, it's delayed. This was supposed to be in place before we signed on to the DDEP, but better late than never. Action has already been taken, and as I speak, there's an enormous amount of work ongoing on the Financial Stability Fund. Hopefully, before the end of the year, we should see some injections coming from the fund. Of course, as community of banks, capital is our live wire, and we need a strong capital base to be able to undertake the financial intermediation that we are assigned to do. So to the extent that some banks don't have the required capital at the moment, the earlier they express interest and also access the funding that is available for their solvency, the better to be for the industry and also for the banking population as well. But I can confirm that the Financial Stability Fund has kicked off. Of course, there's no transaction that has been executed yet, but the investment committee is in place.
Okay, thank you very much for the information, John. Now let's talk about taxes, which is a very key or topical area all the time whenever the budget is read. And I'll start with you, Gideon. Just allow me to lay some quick background. Prior to the budget reading, the government had launched a medium-term revenue strategy that should cover 2024 to 2027, and that was to improve domestic tax collection, I think, and also non-tax revenue mobilization. Subsequently, the budget statement has proposed several tax reliefs and waivers. We've seen it, some of them targeted at particular industries, particular products that are goods that are produced locally. Overall, how do you expect these measures, will impact on businesses, households, and general, economic growth?
Okay, thank you very much. If you look at what was said in the budget, I think in terms of taxes, there's a lot more that would have been impactful that was not said at all. Because of the discussions leading to the budget events where the government itself, they had a lot of discussions with taxpayers. There was a lot of discussion, and the AGI and co were also involved, about reducing VAT, customs duties, like those other things, the cost of raw materials, etc. Because if we are talking about changing the structure of the economy currently, cost of doing business in Ghana is very, very high. We talk about garments, we talk about machinery, equipment, etc. So there was a lot more that was said than was said. It's good to see the fact that agri machinery inputs, etc., were included and said there were going to be import duties, etc. So that's much more welcome. But we need to see the details of those exemptions and see what is very basic inputs or whether it's going to be a part of the value-added chain machinery itself, which can be used by the agro processing sector. When you see those, then we can just see that yes, it's going to have this so much effect. The electric vehicles, assembling of vehicles, etc., they are good, but to what extent do they employ so much more in the economy? It affects, I don't think they employ more than 100,000 people. They have the potential to do so, but currently they do not. So if they were even given this exemption, we could have given a timeline and say it's going to be effective for this so and so period, rather than say 8 years is okay, or for even when there is no timeline at all. That will not be very good. Maybe we are hearing things from other political comments, etc., that when they come into power, they're going to do this and that, and it doesn't work well. If I'm an investor and I'm coming to invest $500 million, a certain certainty that's going to last for 5 years or 10 years, I want to put my money in there. So it's good, but as I said, there's so much more that have not been said than have been said in the current one. And let me add a comment to it. We have discussions about how the structure of the economy looks like and where we want to take it to. And it's no surprise that when you look at the American economy, the indicator that we price very much is how many individuals have been added to the quota. They look at more than even the GDP. So they say at the end of this quarter, 800,000 individuals were created. And if you look at the structure of their tax system, they get more from PY than any other. In America, where you have taxing, you have Amazon and Co, they get a lot more taxes from PYE. And because they're looking at employing much more people. So if we focus on this and we put a lot more reliance on industry and companies, and making sure companies employ hundreds and hundreds of thousands, we will get a lot more from taxes than we even think we are giving up from maybe VAT or CIT. And then the chain effects all over the economy will then go, because we have more people working, they will look for more things, they will pay goods, they will pay education, etc. And then the economy will have that uplift we've been looking for.
Okay, thanks, Gideon. I'll come back to you still on the taxes, but let me move to Madam Adobia, still on the taxes. Madam Adobia, we've seen a number of tax proposals, reliefs included, or tax waivers. Are these waivers and incentives enough to support the growth of industry sector? And I'd like you to take that with this other question. What other measures can the government take to promote sustainable economic growth and job creation in Ghana whilst being mindful of the environment? I think, that balancing act in terms of raising revenue to keep being fiscally disciplined and not overly relying on borrowings is what this question is trying to address. So how do we achieve this balance? First, the waivers and incentives, do you think they are enough to support the growth of industry? And what other measures can the government look at in balancing this act?
So, I think aspects of the revenues that are good enough for the industry. and others are not adequate. I'll give an example. Textile industry, where the VAT waiver was given, and we realized that they picked up in terms of production and volumes and culminated into their outputs. And at the end of the day, their taxes in terms of corporate tax was much more than the VAT they would have been charged. And that's part of the reason why we were able to make a case and make an input to the Ministry of Finance to consider giving an extension for another 2 years in waiving of the tax. Then some key parts, for example, and I would give credit also to the CSOs and this issue, and finally we have gotten it. Can manufacture sanitary pads. When you look at the sanitary pads, you case from about 3 companies at the time, saying Sundan and Sanita. Sundan has capacity to produce the national demand, because the national demand is 5 million, they could do 550, in addition to what they could do. But the interesting thing is that there's a company, Santa, that started, they are in Tamakon, that's production, and they folded up, started importing sanitary pads from the sister company in Egypt. So you can imagine that the environment, the conditions push them out of business, and then they start importing instead of being able to produce. We are believing that with these waivers, of course, some of these companies that have fallen out will be able to join. There's another company, Big Hygiene, set up everything and never started production. So we believe that this can get them back onto the way to start production, and then we can get the benefit of it. Coming into protection. The last time we did an exercise like this, I looked at Nigeria, how they were able to protect their own industry. It was a fair decision. It was a very fair decision. They had to, at a point, even block the borders, close the borders to protect their own industry. Today, they are self-sufficient. That's what do we do? That's what we do. We always open up. This textile industry started for so long, we have done our best. However, we still have textiles in the market. When you go in the market today, you will see textiles that you can't tell how they came in and where they are coming from. And they are with local brands. So that's the tax waivers, the protection should be key. Then again, something we have mentioned in the past as businesses, the exchange rate. I just looked at taxes. That's, for example, electric vehicles, looking at the energy. So we have tax bands, 5%, 10%, 20%. I just did a 5-year analysis in 2018. Tax and impact of the 10% import duty would have a total tax of about 34%, and 20% will have about 46%. But today it has changed. There's about 5% and 6% differential. A 10% import duty item has a total tax of about 39%, and what of a 20% is doing 52%. However, the exchange rate at 2018 was 4.4. So if I'm a business and I'll use a vehicle again. If I've imported a vehicle and the total tax is about $10,000. 2018, I've been paying 4.4, which is $44,000. Today, I'm paying the same $10,000 or perhaps more. But even if I maintain the $10,000 at 12, I'm paying $120,000. So you ask yourself, what business, what income will I make to be able to pay these taxes? And these are the new challenges we are going through. So we try to address inflation through tightening fiscal policy and that. But then, if we leave the rate of exchange as it is, then it will be a vicious cycle. So businesses are asking, can government fix the exchange rate on a quarterly basis just for imports at the port? That enclave, the port enclave, so that businesses can project and plan, and it can stabilize pricing as well. Because if I bring in a quota And I should be able to tell that within these 3 months, my exchange rate is pegged at 12 and is not skyrocketing. Then again, we are looking at the aggressive revenue mobilization. Of course, it's part of the plan to recover. But then it's become more of like sense because we've done very well. We have GLO doing their best. We have other service coming in. We have Iroko going everywhere, and businesses are complaining. We all know that angels don't do business, and so there have been abuses in the past here and there. And beyond the abuses we have, there's 30 companies that have a track record of being compliant. And so when we record some of these infractions, it is not expected that we generalize it and bring up a policy that will affect everyone. But maybe we can be specific, make a deliberate effort, be specific, and attend to them. So from where we are coming from as businesses, we think that government should protect businesses where it means that there should be tax increase, they should do it to protect business. Where they have to ban certain products, they have to do it to protect business. And aside that, see how the exchange rate can be fixed to protect the importation, because raw materials are equally being imported. And so if you give a tax waiver on the raw materials and the exchange rate is still skyrocketing, it ends up affecting production.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Adubi. I think we are already out of time. I think the conversations got too interesting maybe, and we have all enjoyed it, but we want to just grant about 10 minutes to our audience here, for questions. If online as well. So someone should please take the microphone around. Questions, contributions, but kindly keep it brief, please.
Entry, former Director General Securities and Exchange Commission. I have some recommendations to make. Unfortunately, the Deputy Minister is not in, but I believe she will hear it. Two recommendations on the increasing our revenue base. The first, when I was in office, I was always forcing for government to ensure some level playing field between dividend taxation and interest taxation. We tax dividend no matter how small. Whereas when you invest in financial securities, you take your interest without tax. And I say it's not good. We are not helping the capital markets in terms of equity market. So government should at least exempt the small dividends from taxation. We haven't met that any positive response. Dividends are still taxed, whereas big interests are not taxed. I have some dividend warrants. It's good that SEC is stopping that. When I get it, I have investment in almost every listed company, but for economic, financial, academic purpose, not investment, because some of the investments just very small. I get a dividend, and sometimes 3 cedis dividend. It has been taxed. So when I get a warrant, I don't even send it to the bank because I realize that even working from my office to the bank will cost me more than the value of the warrant. 2 cedis, you are taxed. Meanwhile, when people take dividend, when people take interest on their treasury bill and government bonds, no tax. If we can't give any waiver for the equity that's there, then government should, in its own interest, start taxing interest on financial securities. Now you are down, you don't have money, and you are paying billions of money in interest to bondholders and treasury bill people, and you are not taxing, and you are chasing 2 cedis tax, 2 cedis on equity to tax. Why are you leaving that? I wanted the minister to give me a response to that. I think that we should look at it. And when government start taxing, even if it's 0.5% of tax on this big interest that government is paying, government will save some money and it will increase your tax base, the revenue. The second one is on the informal sector. I get worried when I'm paying people, I'm paying Mason to come and do my work, and they don't pay the tax. They are collecting about that one. Now Accra here is about 150 Ghana cedis to employ a Mason. The laborers are taking 100 and 120, no tax. All over the country, everybody is getting this no tax. And we are sitting there and say, so we can't think that how do we bring all these people into the tax net? They are earning income. People are paying taxes on their minimum wage. Minimum wage today is what? I don't think it's about 30, nobody earns 30 cedis. Minimum wage, but you pay tax. And these people are there, they are all taking money from the system and not paying tax. And we as a country, we are sitting down and it's like, so we can't do anything about it. I think we can start having dialogue on how to bring all these people into the tax net. Now, telecommunication is there. Every one of the people are holding mobile phone. Can't we link these mobile phones to tax identification numbers? We link it. If you hold a mobile phone and your tax identification number is linked there, then we know you are a taxpayer. If you can't link your mobile phone number to a tax identification number, then we know you are not a taxpayer, and we should find a way of taxing you. If we can't determine how much you earn, at least how much you put on your phone, we can see that at least you have earned that. If you hide everything that you have earned, at least you can hide the ones you have used to purchase what? Credit. And small, we can develop the system. You tax them on the credit that they have purchased, just to say that this one I have determined that you have earned 10 cedis because you use 10 cedis to buy what? Credit. So if it's 0.5% or 10%, it goes into a tax. Let us have a dialogue and find out stakeholders, the IT people will be there, these people will be there, and we will come out with something so that we can take taxes from all these people who are making money but not paying taxes. Then we can advance this country in terms of revenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The issue on expanding the tax net is very critical and must be looked at. Our online audience, we have not forgotten about you. We've taken note of your many questions, majorly directed at the minister. And so we will submit them to the minister. We are sure that in due time, when the opportunity arises, we will be able to share the feedback with you. We have come to the end of the program today. Thank you very much for sticking with us. I'll invite Sewa to come and give us the closing remarks.
Thank you. In closing, once again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for making the time to be here. Without you, we couldn't have had this program. As I said in the beginning, at Deloitte, we are passionate about making an impact that matters. And we couldn't have had this impactful program without you. This program is the beginning of the discussions. It's only just started. We've taken your questions. The minister has heard. What she didn't hear, we're going to compile all of them and send. So there are a number of things that for me will stick with me. For example, the minister saying that, the deputy minister saying that 2023, sorry, is a bounce back year. However, we are not out of the woods yet. We all agree on that. The numbers are indicating some kind of recovery. There's still a lot more to do. The government says they are showing commitment to avoid election year fiscal slippages by having no commercially funded loan projects. Government will set aside money for that. We hope the government will be able to live up to this. And we also have heard that, yes, we've had some recovery. The data does not lie, but the recovery should be broad-based. So how do we sustain and broaden this recovery? So this and other, issues that have come up are staying with me. And I'm sure we're all taking pertinent issues away that like I said, the discussion has only just started. Thank you. If you look on your tables, you'll see QR codes for the feedback survey. Kindly scan them with your phones and provide responses in the survey. Thank you once again. I look forward to seeing you at the next Deloitte event. Have a good day. Thank you. Visit the buffet table. There's a lot of food on the patio outside, so please, please go out and have some food in case you're not able to eat before the program started. Thank you.
Yes, it is. It's been
Oh, darling, dry your eyes, it'll be alright. Just look to the sky now. Gonna lay here in my arms, I can feel your heart. I'm by your side now.